they're going to pass the tray for you, but we're going to start preaching so that we don't waste time, right? So, let me see the hands of all the kids. Where are the kids? Okay. So, I'm going to start reviewing something that's important. And then we're going to go back to where we were for the sermons last year. What time are you supposed to get to church? What do you think? 10 o'clock is a good goal. What do you think? 9:30 is a wonderful goal, but kind of hard to make. But if you shoot for 9:30, you might make it by 10. I understand. Life happens. What do you think? What time are you trying to get to church? What's your family shooting for? 10:15 is a good goal. 10:15 is after the liturgy has started, but it's the beginning parts of the service. So we haven't actually read the epistle yet by 10:15, and we haven't sung the Trisagion hymn. The Trisagion is technically, historically in the ancient church when the liturgy begins. So everything else is sort of introductory. If you're there by the Trisagion, you're not late, even if you're there after 10 o'clock. Anyone shoot for 10:30? I know that a lot of families are coming in at 10:30 or even 10:45. I'm not going to put you on the spot because I know life is hard. I know getting the family out the door for church with multiple ages of kids is difficult. But still, we need to make the goal not later than 10:15 if we can manage it. And if we know we can't do it, if we were up all night with the kids or something different, then we need to still keep Sunday morning set apart and unique so that we don't start to take it for granted. This has to be the core and the center of our lives as Orthodox Christians. So, if you know that you aren't going to be able to get to church until 10:45, okay. But we have the camera upstairs. It's live streaming just the Solea, just the front of the church, to YouTube. You can watch it live. So kids, I know it's weird, I know it's strange, and I don't want to make this a replacement. But if you know you're going to be late because life is hard, put the service on someone's phone so that you can hear it, so that you are already moving in the direction of church while you're getting into the car, while you're driving, while you're getting out of the car and coming inside the church. Turn it off by the time you come inside. You hear me? Good. All right. But it's important. It's important that we be participating in the worship of the church, even if we can't be here physically first thing in the morning, because we understand life is complicated and the world doesn't make it easy. So we do all that we can. Now, for the rest, what were we talking about last year for the whole year? Does anybody remember? I didn't make it easy for you because there was a book I brought out every single time, and we talked about it. What book did I bring out for the children's sermons? The Old Testament, the Bible. So what were we talking about? We were talking about the Bible. We were going through the stories from the very beginning. So we left the children of Israel in the desert on their way from Egypt to the Promised Land, but let's review how we got there. How we got there. In the beginning, God made everything. Right? This isn't a surprise. We know this. In the beginning, God made everything. And last of all, He made human beings. And He made them to love Him. He made them to be blessed and to be peaceful and to be happy. And He told them, all you need to do to stay blessed and peaceful and happy is stay in communion with me and not run away. So what did Adam and Eve do? They ran away. They disobeyed, and all of us then grow up from when we're very small out of communion with God. So we have to come back. And things got worse after Adam and Eve left the garden after they ran away, because their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren and so on and so forth got more and more sinful. So that at the end of the day, life was so bad, it was so messed up, it was so violent and broken and ugly that God said, I'm going to wipe the slate clean. We're going to send a flood to wash all of the sin away, and I'll save only the righteous. And how many righteous did he find? Do you remember? Well, what was the name of the one guy who was righteous that didn't die in the flood? Noah. So, Noah and his wife, and their 3 sons, and their 3 sons' wives, so that's 8 people. And all the animals, they rode out the flood in the ark, and after the flood, they started over. Did things go well? Not so much. People still fell into sin, but there was a descendant of Noah who was righteous. And God spoke to him and he said, Abram, leave your family, leave the place where you grew up, and go into a place I'm going to show you, and I will make you a great nation, and you will be a blessing to all the peoples of the world. So Abram got up and he went. He left. He wandered and he traveled, and eventually he arrived in the place that we now call Palestine or Israel. And there he had 2 sons. One son that he did himself, and it was kind of not the best thing, but thank God, because many people came from that. And then the second son, who was the son of promise with his wife, Sarah. And God renamed him from Abram to Abraham. We know who Abraham is, right? This is important. And Abraham became the father of many nations. And they were all called to peace and to love and to glory. But there were problems. So Abraham had a son, Isaac. And Isaac had a son named Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. And then there was a famine. So they all ended up in Egypt, where there was food. But in Egypt they were enslaved, right? We remember they became slaves, and they were slaves for 400 years until God called a big strong man with a long beard who would lead them out of the desert with a sword. No, he called a baby named Moses, who was put out on the river, and he was found by Pharaoh's daughter. And we know this story. Moses grows up, he kills an Egyptian, he has to run away. God calls him back because he speaks to him on Mount Sinai, and there we have an icon of that. There's Moses. And he sent him back into Egypt to tell Pharaoh to let God's people go. And Pharaoh didn't want them to let them go, so God sent 10 plagues. And at the end of the plagues, Pharaoh finally said, get out, go away, I don't want to see you anymore. So God took his people out of Egypt, and they went into the desert. And in the desert, we would like to say they obeyed God, they followed him with piously and with joy and gratitude, and they went straight through the desert from Egypt to the promised land, and everybody lived happily ever after. But that's not what happened. They disobeyed. They complained. They murmured. And so they were condemned to, well, that's actually where we left off. Because they had had a few issues, but they had received the law, they had received instructions for how to worship God, and they are right at the border of the promised land, and that's where we left them, ready to go in and take the country. So next time, we'll talk about that and how that goes. Just so you know, we haven't even had a year or 2 pass by, so it isn't going to go well, but we'll see why. Now, for now, let's stand up and receive communion. Please, we ask all of you who are here, go first to the narthex, come down the center aisle, the same on the